All right, night one of the 2023 NFL Draft is in the books, and the greatest surprise of all, the Saints didn't trade up. They had their guy, which was fairly apparent. We all really should have seen this coming. Nick Underhill uh, kind of was dropping hints on this over the last several days, but luckily for Saints fans, whether you like the pick or not, and the Saints organization, the guy that they wanted, Bryan Bresee out of Clemson, defensive tackle, pick 29, fell right to them. They did not have to sacrifice any additional assets this year or next year in order to make that selection, which is good because this team has quite a number of holes. And this is also a draft where there's a lot of guys with similar talent levels, really between picks 20 or so and 90. So, if the Saints make two or even three selections tomorrow, that would be great. But we're obviously here to talk about Bryan Bresee. So, defensive tackle out of Clemson. Do I love the pick? No. Um, I would have rather had Tomey out of Bawari, out of Northwestern. Better athlete, cleaner bill of health. I think a more explosive player. Um, that said, he wasn't on my list of players I was looking at because of his injury concerns. So I just wrote him off. I didn't look into him. Obviously, now that he's the pick, have to look a little bit deeper. So here's my immediate thoughts. This is obviously from NFL Network, so good 40-yard dash. It's pretty solid 10-yard split. Vertical jump's okay. Bench press, he did a lot better at his pro day, and on film he looks pretty strong, so I'm not too worried about that. Um, Big thing is he's a super high RAS guy, relative athletic score. So he's someone who, athletically speaking, is he's tested well. You When he was on the field, you see it, but you don't just see it from the standpoint like a Marcus Davenport, where you would see it, and sometimes he would make plays because he was just so physically gifted, but it wasn't necessarily really playing football. He plays football. Like Brazile's a good player. Like I said before, my biggest concern with him is really the injuries. With that said, looking a little bit deeper, here's the thing with the injuries. Let's be optimistic and positive about this because I think this is the Saints' mentality and why they were comfortable taking him where they did. He tore his ACL in 2021, so that's 2 years ago. And ACL tears are not the death sentence that they were 20 plus years ago, 30 plus years ago, etc. Nowadays, even Achilles guys come back from, and that used to be the ultimate athlete injury. But ACLs can be repaired. Did have shoulder surgery. That was in January of 2022, so like you can kind of read that as 2021. It's around the same time period. Last season he missed time because of a kidney infection. That's not a recurring thing. You don't expect the guy. This isn't the Bucks locker room. He's not going to. The whole team isn't going to get sepsis. We're probably going to be okay there. But here's my biggest thing as far as his missed time and why I am not right this moment going to write off the pick or his production over the last year and a half. So his little sister, Ella, was fighting cancer, and he lost her this last year. That is beyond devastating. And you got to remember something about these players being drafted. These are young kids. This young man just watched his little sister waste away from one of the most horrible diseases you can get. And he lost her. You would have to be a psychopath to have football be the most important thing in your life when that's what you're going through. So him being overweight at times, not having the production, plus, the kidney infection, all of those other issues. The last year and a half, I don't, if he had played amazing, that would have been great. But the fact that he didn't, I don't think you can, in any good conscience, hold that against him. And I don't necessarily think it shows that he's injury prone. Because again, time missed because of family illness, time missed because of an infection. Neither of these are things, doesn't have a long history of lower body injuries, which is the number one thing you're looking for in big guys. If you have a lot of lower body injuries, especially at certain locations around the knees, around the ankle area, that's where it becomes really problematic, really questionable because of just the frame, the size, the mass, etc. Involved. He doesn't have a lot of that. So, do I think he is a huge injury concern now that I'm actually looking into it? I don't. I'm still not in love with the pick, but I definitely don't hate the pick, and I think there's a very real chance he could end up being an impact player for the Saints sooner rather than later. The little bit of him that I've had a chance to watch over the last hour, which is obviously not much, moves really, really well, fluid athlete. We can tell that he's dynamic, that he's a pretty explosive guy, he's a pretty strong guy, seems to love football. Those are all things that matter. And frankly, it would be kind of difficult for him to not be better than what we had last year. It's kind of a throwaway compliment, but it is there. So from that perspective, the 29th pick, those last couple of picks in the first round are really just high second round picks from a certain perspective. In the vast majority of drafts, when you're talking about a talent perspective. So if you look at it that way, this type of player, super low first, super high second, is it? Are you likely getting a good return on your investment? I think I'm perfectly fine with it. And now having a little bit more information about the injury history and what all those games missed actually means, I'm a lot more comfortable with the pick than I otherwise would have been. And let's see what they do.